The Democrats have a slim majority, one seat in the House. The Republicans control the Senate. We have a Democratic governor, and this, moved through committee and through the House with overwhelming support, which is also a credit to Mike and his ability to work both sides of the aisle and just. It's not something you see anymore lately. I feel like everything is it's a very polarizing divide, no matter what your issue is. And it was great that Mike just jumped in and worked, obviously, with his caucus, but also the Democratic caucus to get some meaningful legislation passed here in PA. Because I think we'd be the fifth state. I could be wrong, but I think we would be the fifth state, which is, it's nice to have Pennsylvania out in the lead.
Yeah, this was actually a very interesting election. I read about the crypto and blockchain influence on this election. It seems like over $160 million went into the election from PAC. Okay, welcome to a special edition of User Extractable Value. I'm your host, Alec Beckman. Joining me from the Advantage Blockchain team, as always, Monty Fortenbaugh, and we're joined by two very special guests today. Really appreciate having on Mike Cabell, the state legislator from Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, and Dominic Folino, who runs the Pennsylvania Blockchain Coalition. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So I think what we'd love to do is start with really an introduction on yourselves, kind of your current role, previous experience, and then how you got into crypto or blockchain.
Mike,
you or me, Dom?
Go ahead, Mike.
Sure. So yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate you having me. Mike Cabell, state rep of the 117th district in Luzerne County. My background is in business. I was in the substance abuse treatment business for a long time. We exited that industry, and shortly thereafter, I jumped into this role. It was moved back home into my hometown. There was an open seat, and we kind of took a look at the map, took a look at the math, and saw that it might be a good fit for me to jump into the role. So won a 5-way primary almost a little over 2 years ago, and I've been the state rep in the 117th ever since. Really, my journey in crypto started long before that. Long-time investor in Bitcoin and some other tokens. But really excited to talk to you guys about what we've been able to do here in Pennsylvania and kind of leading the way as far as some of the states, especially the larger states, and digital asset legislation. So thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Great. Dominic Folino, PA Blockchain Coalition. I have a campaign background, campaign staffer, went into financial services. While I was in financial services in-house at a firm, a lot of folks from the West Coast started talking about Bitcoin. I was intrigued, and I went down the rabbit hole from there. And then in 2001, around the infrastructure bill, which would redefine a broker, that is how the PA blockchain was formed. And then from there, we spun out. There were 13 different states initially, and we spun out the U.S. Blockchain Coalition. And that's just, and we've been trying just trying to educate people ever since. And we're growing every day. We're looking forward to it.
Awesome. Super exciting as a Pennsylvanian. When we started Advantage Blockchain, there was not a huge community in Pennsylvania around blockchain. So amazing what's become. And obviously what we're here to talk about today is the PA Bitcoin rights bill, which is super exciting. And, we'd love to hear more about it. And I think the first question we had is, what is in this bill and why is it so important?
Sure. Yeah. So this is it's had a lot of different names. It's had a lot of different iterations. We've worked through a ton of special interests and outside groups have helped us kind of craft this to get it to the point where it was going to be palatable for our legislature. Pennsylvania is unique in that it's I believe, Dominic, the only split legislature in the entire country. So a lot of states have a lot easier getting through legislation. I happen to be a Republican, and the state legislature is controlled by Democrats. I would like to believe, and this is proof that it's true that blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin is a nonpartisan, a bipartisan thing, and it was kind of proven here. So anyway, getting back to the process, Dom and his team at PA Blockchain Coalition, the folks from Satoshi Action, Eric and Dennis, those folks had a hand in all had a hand in crafting this language. We iterated multiple times. We got some. We had to, when we first introduced it, and we really tried to get it to a point where we were going to bring it to a vote. We had to run the language past the administration, the Shapiro administration, the banking administration, and they had a couple things that we needed to tweak, but ultimately, it took a while, but we got there. And the main focus of this legislation is it's essentially codifying the right for folks to transact in Bitcoin, or I'm sorry, cryptocurrencies, transact in digital assets, custody digital assets, and it defines some key terms. So it's protecting folks, the 4+ million Pennsylvanians. It codifies their right to do what they've already been doing. So it's fairly broad, but it's purposeful. And it's similar legislation has passed a few other states and passed the U.S. Congress as well. So I'm pretty proud of what we've been able to accomplish.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think, and Dominic, I don't know if you wanted to add anything there, but.
No, I think Mike really hit on the point that this is bipartisan, right? We have the Democrats have a slim majority, one seat in the House. The Republicans control the Senate. We have a Democratic governor, and this, moved through committee and through the House with overwhelming support, which is also a credit to Mike and his ability to work both sides of the aisle and just. It's not something you see anymore lately. I feel like everything is it's a very polarizing divide, no matter what your issue is. And it was great that Mike just jumped in and worked, obviously, with his caucus, but also the Democratic caucus to get some meaningful legislation passed here in PA. Because I think we'd be the 5th state. I could be wrong, but I think we would be the 5th state, which is, it's nice to have Pennsylvania out in the lead.
Yeah, this was actually a very interesting election. I read about the crypto and blockchain influence on this election. It seems like over $160 million went into the election from PACs that represented various crypto and blockchain organizations, really pushing that cause. I read somewhere that over 270 elected officials received money from those PACs, meaning that they are crypto friendly. It definitely, I think, was an influence on this election. So very, very exciting. So Mike and Dominic would love to hear about your role in the bill itself.
Again, Mike, we'll have to kick it off to you as the sponsor.
Yeah. So one of my priorities, being a freshman, new legislator, and especially my party not controlling the House. I had to try to prioritize, what I was going to get done this past session, because quite frankly, with the split legislature, not a lot got done, quite frankly, not a lot of substance, in my opinion. So my role was to pretty much the entire 2 years, I developed relationships and I built up some political capital and got to a point where, I was able to go, because the way it works in the PA State House is the majority party controls the calendar. So essentially, if the Democrats in this case don't want to run something for whatever reason, it doesn't get run. The fear here wasn't that they weren't going to run it because they're against it or anything. It's just not one of their members' priority. And quite frankly, I don't think it was. It was my priority. So towards the end of the session, I got to a point where I was able to go to them and convince them to run it. As I mentioned, we did have a few bumps in the road. It actually went relatively smooth, and Dom, you can jump in here too when I'm done and give your perspective on how it actually went. But just a couple. We had a couple amendments. A member of my own party actually amended it. It ended up being an agreed to amendment. We had an amendment put on it that would have probably killed the bill by a member of the Democratic caucus, and we got him to pull that amendment. So I'm grateful to him that he was able to do that and willing to do that. It goes back to the relationships that we built, and it was kind of cool the way it all worked out, because we had every single Republican. So we had 100. I guess it was 99 Republican votes, because I think we have one that was he was deployed at the time, and I think we had 70. I want to say 76 Democrats voted for it. So you had a few. You had a small faction of the Democratic caucus that didn't, for reasons that we could get into here if you'd like. I think I have a pretty good idea of why they didn't vote on it. They didn't vote yes on it, but after all that, it ended up being a very bipartisan bill, and again, one of the only, I want to say not handful, but maybe a couple dozen Republican-sponsored bills that made it through the House this session in 2 years.
Sure. Actually, I would love to know, and I think our audience would love to know, some of the pushback that you did receive on the bill. Whether going into specifics or not.
Yeah, I'm happy to. We weren't sure how it was going to go. We were pretty sure. Just in knowing the strategy of the Democratic caucus this session, they didn't like dividing their caucus very much on the House floor. They wanted to show a unified front. That was their strategy. Not knocking it. It worked for them. They're in the majority. Looks like they might be in the majority still here next session as well. So, we had a pretty good idea that it was going to pass, or they wouldn't have run it. But we weren't sure, if the entire. I was pretty sure my entire caucus was gonna vote for it. Was not sure how it was gonna go on the other side. All was pretty. It was funny because in committee, every single Democrat voted for it, and I had like 5 or 6 Republicans vote no on it. So those couple weeks in between the committee vote and the floor vote. Dom and I and the folks from Satoshi, we huddled up many times to try to figure out how this was going to go. That was a little worrisome, I have to admit. And we worked through those issues. That's what the amendment came in. They were a little worried about CBDCs. They amended it. That took care of that worry, which was great. Got my entire caucus behind it. It was about to go for a vote. I gave brief floor remarks. It was about to go for a vote, and we had a member of the other caucus press his button to stand up and speak, and that was a rep that is, I would say, the leading environmentalist voice from the Democratic caucus. So that particular rep stood up and had, he opined on his case for why this was not a good bill. Kind of tried to say like. This is I think the quote was, this bill is a solution looking for a problem. Could not disagree more with that. It's codifying a right to do something. And then went into the whole diatribe about some of the issues that folks have with the environmental quote aspects of cryptocurrency, crypto mining, that kind of thing. So, that was his issue. And then from there, if you looked at the votes that were put up, it was definitely the more progressive environmental types that voted no on the bill. So, but like I said, 76, almost 2/3 of Democrats did vote yes for it. So, I think those fears, as we know, a lot of us, I would assume all of us on the Zoom understand, the fear and the unfortunately ignorance in a lot of ways of this stuff, but the mainstream narrative sometimes goes against the actual facts.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there around the effects on energy, specifically with the environment, that brings a lot of concerns with proof of work mining. And I think there's some really good resources out there that debunk this, but it always comes up. I think it's becoming less and less prevalent. But
agreed.
Kicking it back to you, Dominic, would love to understand your role in this entire process.
Yeah, so look, our role as the Blockchain Coalition, we've been, on an education tour with the legislature. And look, we started out in the Republican caucus, our first meeting was actually the Republican senator, and then we did a number of Republican House members. And finally, in the last, I'd say, year or so, we've started to get some traction with the Democrats as well. And that was, our role initially was just to some of the legislators I didn't know, just to talk to them. As Mike can tell you, there were a lot of freshmen in PA in the last 2 years. So there was a lot of folks that I needed to get to know, but also just about education and saying like, look, we're not here to advocate for anything. We're here to say, look, this is what the space looks like. This is where the space is going. And I think it enabled us, especially with some of the Democrats that Mike had mentioned, to have those relationships and be able to talk to them and say like, look, this is why this bill is good. This is what this bill does. To Mike's point, for 4 million Pennsylvanians, 1.6 million have crypto. So I forget what that statistic is. I think it's like, it's like 20 Citizens Bank parks or something like that. You can do the math. But so it's an idea that, look, this is coming. It's been coming. It's here. And as Mike said, obviously there's the environmental concern, but I think the other concern is, and also as you brought up, Alec, there's so much misinformation out there. It's just, look, the bad actors, who I don't ever want to mention, really started these fires. And I think we had some momentum. And then, we obviously, we can't not mention FTX, right? And then everyone's, it wasn't a failure of crypto. It wasn't a failure of blockchain. It was a bad actor, right? And that set us back a little bit. But I think, as this new crop of legislators, some of the freshmen came in to understand that that's not exactly what it is. So it helped us build that kind of base of understanding and create the Blockchain Coalition, because we're bipartisan. So it's just a matter of, hey, look, we're a resource for you. Do you have questions? How can we help you? This is really the first. There was a mining bill that was in the member that Mike mentioned earlier. We got on the other side of that, but for the most part, the coalition is just advocating for common sense legislation. Often that exists in other states.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting.
I can hop in here for a sec.
Go.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
So Mike, one of the key parts of the bill was defining the terms. I know at the beginning here we talked about how kind of the broker-dealer term set everything on fire prior in kind of the U.S. Federal kind of Senate bill. How did you guys in PA define the terms, whether it's digital asset or blockchain? Like, what is the process to actually defining the wording that goes into the bill?
So that's definitely where the folks from PA Blockchain and Satoshi Action came in to help us, because we were, I believe, the fifth state to do it, and it was a lot of trial and error. This is almost 95%, 99% of legislation that's being run in state houses and probably Congress as well is just recycled. This stuff is not. This stuff had to be written from scratch because, it's a new asset class. It's a new revolution here. It's not like this stuff has been around for 100 years, whereas pretty much everything else that's being legislated in some form. I mean, I would say every single idea that I had over the last 2 years, when I went back to research and said, hey, I have this idea, could we write up a bill? And they'd be like, oh yeah, here's what so-and-so tried to pass 6 years ago. And then you iterate on that. So this one was a little bit more challenging, and certainly folks that are much smarter than me on policy had their hands in crafting it. So I attribute that, like I said, to groups like PA Blockchain and Satoshi, but then also my research department in the House Republican Caucus. Once we figured out where it was going to go, you have an executive director there who understands policy and understands the law, and made sure that they helped me tailor it so that it was something that would make sense and pass the muster of all the lawyers and everybody else. So I couldn't have done it without all the help. That's for sure.
Did any of the let's say crypto advocates, or kind of whether it's a PA Blockchain or Satoshi Action Fund, did any of them ever give like conflicting advice and then you guys would have to mediate it, or was it mostly like most crypto people understood what was needed?
Can I jump in here, Mike?
Sure.
I think a big part of this was, to Mike's point, a lot of this legislation, right? So sometimes model legislation comes out and you try to apply it to 10 states, but it doesn't. Every state is different. Every legislature is different. Every regulatory body is different, right? So I think with this bill, for instance, this bill had a very different intent originally. And that bill may have worked in another state, but there were specific points in it that we knew that there were interest groups in PA that would not be okay with. We knew that the governor's office wouldn't be okay with it because we knew that we wanted this to get signed, right? So to Mike's point, we had to get creative. We had to take some other model legislation and other bills, but also then put the two together and compare what would work in PA. So the answer, Monty, is yes. Folks definitely had put language out there that they said, well, this is great language in, I don't know, Virginia. And we said, great, but that's not going to work here. So yes, we did get conflicting advice that was based on model legislation that had passed. But that just because it passed in another state, in this instance, 4 other states, but there are also proposed bills out there, right? So we had to tailor more specifically to PA. And to Mike's credit too, I mean, look, there were crypto advocates, there were, interest groups, nonprofits, but, Mike had also taken that kind of proactive step to go even outside of that and just get some private industry folks that understood, like the energy argument. Well, how would this affect you? Right? Because you don't realize, when you write, I was a staffer before Mike was born. I was a staffer and I remember the first bill that I saw and I was like, why would we ever oppose this bill? And I advised my member, and then all of a sudden all these people came out of the woodwork because there was one sentence that adversely affected a group. And it was a really valuable lesson very early on. And that's what Mike kind of did is reached out to all of these different groups to put all the puzzle pieces together. They say,
real quick on that,
saying you don't ever want to see, sausage and laws get made. Look at Mike.
No, yeah, you're right. And I appreciate that, Dom. But, and like, for example, one of the groups that opined on it was the banking, the Department of Banking. And they were only opined on it because they were asked to by House Democrats because they didn't know who else to go to in the building to get, and then I spoke with their legislative liaison, and he's like, Mike, I don't have an opinion on this. Like, I will give you an opinion. And then they went to the department secretary and to the chief of staff and the lawyers, and they came up with something that they weren't overly comfortable with. It was something that was a little too broad for them. My belief is they misinterpreted that. We amended it anyway, just to get them to be neutral and whatever. But the point I'm trying to make is that that this stuff, as we all know, I mean, I feel like I know more than most on this stuff, but I'm just like literally tip of the iceberg. And compared to like anybody in the administration or other legislators, like, I started the hearing saying like I understand that this stuff makes people's eyes glaze over, and a lot of times it's scary because it's so confusing and you know what I mean. So was one of the challenges. So we did, you can't get it done without help from the groups like PA Blockchain, Satoshi, and going out and having those conversations, and because it takes a lot to get people educated on this stuff.
Yeah, thanks. And you guys kind of touched upon this, but I wonder if there's any specifics that you guys wanted in the bill that got left out, or is there anything like what didn't make it into the bill and why? I mean, I'm sure some people vetoed stuff, but you don't have to go too deep, but interested in this.
I mean, I'll let Dom speak for himself. My goal for this, my stated goal was to get this to be a crack in the dam. This was to get something on the board for one of the largest and economically viable, especially energy-wise and everything else, states in the country, so that we could really start this larger discussion. So I'm happy with the language. There's nothing that I would have hoped to have had in there. My goal was to get something where we could say we're protecting the rights of the folks holding these assets, transacting these assets, and mining these assets and whatever else. We're protecting their rights and we're starting that larger macro discussion in the state of Pennsylvania. So we achieved that goal, and I think to Dom's point, this was I think earlier this summer we had a different bill that probably would have been maybe slightly more. It would have made a bigger splash, maybe, but there's no chance we were going to pass that. So we couldn't allow perfect to be the enemy of the good, and that's what we did. We got something passed, and we made some national news, and the state's talking about it, and now we build upon it. Now this was that crack in the dam to really build and get to where we need to be as a state, as a country.
And I just want to say really quick to your point, Monty, I mean, maybe not necessarily in this bill, but this was the first bill. So, and I'm going as PA Blockchain Coalition. We've only been around since 2001, right? But I would say the majority of the legislation that was introduced in the House, we were playing defense. We were like, nope, this is bad. Don't regulate it. Stop. Nope. New York's not the model you want. New Jersey's not the model you want. No offense to our neighbors, but this was the first, and I don't want to say we went on the offensive, right? Let's say we were more proactive. Yeah. But traditionally, before this, we were playing defense and trying to make sure we were not defeating bills, but amending and ultimately trying to run the clock out so they get kicked into another session so we can work on them. Whereas this was a proactive, positive, effort to move it forward instead of defeat something.
Awesome. So looking to the future, and really appreciate the explanation on the bill and everything we just covered, but looking towards the future, would love to understand kind of what's next in Pennsylvania specifically for things like digital assets, crypto, blockchain, anything that comes to your mind, Mike, that you would like to cover in the future?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're here a couple days after the election, and Pennsylvania's a little slow to tally some results. So we don't know exactly where the state legislature is going to be. I have my ideas. We have a pretty good clue where it's going to be. If I had to bet, it's not going to change. I think it's going to be a slim majority. Unfortunately for the Republicans, 102, 101. Democrats are going to keep control. That's my assumption. Republicans are going to keep control of the state Senate, and we know who our governor is. And I'll start there. I'll start with Governor Shapiro. Governor Shapiro is a person, and I know Dom knows him well, and I've gotten to know him, and I respect him, and certainly I'll have plenty of stuff that him and I will disagree on. But I've had a couple opportunities to have conversations with him, and I made it a point the last time I talked to him was to mention digital assets and blockchain and cryptocurrency, and say, hey, he's a younger guy. He's definitely a guy that wants to make a splash. He's definitely a guy that has higher aspirations. I think we all in the state of Pennsylvania, he was almost potentially a vice president candidate. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a presidential candidate in 4 years from now. And to your point, Alec, about the energy around the pro crypto, pro blockchain political focus, he's going to pay attention to that. He's going to see that. So I'm encouraged by our conversation that we had about it, because the way I framed it is it's just a technology. It's just like data centers or any other massive industry that is that's growing, and Pennsylvania wants to be at the forefront of that, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't want to be at the forefront of it, and he's told me he does. So and I've been told he would and will sign this bill if it gets to his desk. We've run into a timing issue, unfortunately, and that's where I'll go to next on the future. This bill, we got it done on one of the last days, literally the last session day before the election. We're now post the election. We have a couple days left. Barring a miracle, maybe a little less than a miracle, barring some really things lining up really well, it probably will not get through the Senate this session, just because of the timing issue. If we had 3 days. And they canceled their last day that last week. I was on with one of my senators who's a good friend of mine. And I think she would have done everything she could to help that. But now it's just literally, it's a timing issue. They have their rules that it needs to run through a committee and be considered on 3 separate days. So, that said, we were going to do everything we can to make sure that beginning of next session it gets run through the House again. The Senate should have no problem. Dom has some great relationships in the Senate, as do I. And again, this being a nonpartisan thing, I have a feeling Shapiro's going to want to get something on the board that is bipartisan. Just so he could start the year next year on a good foot. So I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged by Shapiro. I'm encouraged by the Republican Senate. I'm encouraged by leadership in the House that they were willing to do this at the end of the year this year. So all things are pointing to positive things happening in Pennsylvania for digital currencies.
Awesome. And just curious, what percentage of your peers do you think are invested in digital assets?
Not much. Not many. So let me. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I could think of a lot of the younger guys for sure. Dom. I might look young. I'm 39, so I don't think I was. But I am one of the younger guys, believe it or not. So I'm trying to think. I know of a handful in my caucus, but that's probably a good estimate, 10 to 15 at most. Maybe some of the older guys have it in their 401k or something like that now that we have the ETF, but not as many as you would hope, unfortunately.
Just goes to show how early we are.
Yeah. A lot of upside.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think to Mike's point, right? Like you're going to see more adoption, especially. I think we'll probably talk about the election, but Alec, you mentioned it. I mean, two big states, Ohio, Pennsylvania. They just called McCormick in Pennsylvania and Bernie Moreno in Ohio. I mean, that was a lot of crypto money in PA. Flipped seats.
Yeah.
I mean, Casey's family is, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania political royalty, and Sherrod Brown was chair of banking.
Yeah.
So those are not easy folks to knock off.
Yeah, we actually just put something out that talked a little bit about the Brown Moreno race, and it's obviously addition by subtraction. Sherrod Brown, I think, was rated the third worst senator for the digital asset industry. Mm-hmm. And Moreno, I read somewhere that he's an investor in not just cryptocurrency itself, but actually in blockchain technology and infrastructure around it.
He's a big blockchain guy. Mm-hmm. He wants to put all your car titles on blockchain.
Yeah.
God.
He was a crypto entrepreneur, Alec. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Even better.
And so
he's definitely a big blockchain guy, not just crypto. Sorry, Monty, again.
No worries. And so we're like 2 days past election. Obviously the pro crypto candidates had a great election. It's only been 48 hours, but has your guys' networks been talking about this? Have people like you guys are the blockchain people in PA, or people reaching out to you being like, hey, crap, now I have to pay attention, or kind of what's been the inbound?
Me or you, Dom?
I'll take this one. The inbound. Look, again, we're bipartisan. I'm very careful to be bipartisan, but this industry is very energized by the president, incoming president. Very energized by, you did see a lot of crypto-friendly candidates. You're seeing these PACs outside of Fair Shake. There are other PACs that are coming up. And you're seeing it more, right? You're seeing it more on the federal level. But I think you're going to start to see it more on the state level. There were a lot of crypto rallies in the swing states. I attended a Stand with Crypto rally in Philadelphia a few weeks before the election. So, you're going to start to see it. You're going to start to see it more on the state level, because the feds, listen, they just take too long. There's not this magic preemption legislation that everyone thinks is coming.
Yeah. I had an idea for an amendment to the Constitution that gives every U.S. citizen the right to self-custody crypto and no CBDCs, but, without getting too political, I don't want to,
Well, we can run that by now Senator McCormick, who obviously is.
Not yet.
I thought you said they called it.
They did call it.
He's not sworn in yet.
Oh, all right.
I don't think Bob
Elect.
Casey is
Senator
conceded.
elect.
Yeah.
Senator-elect.
No, I think he did. I mean, they called it from McCormick, but you're right. I don't know the case. Yeah, but it's called. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Yeah. Senator-elect McCormick is a good friend of mine. Hosted him in a house right down the road here. I'm friends with the folks that ran his campaign. They reached out to me right after my bill passed, and we're really pumped about it. And they saw the momentum. I got the texts every day from Stan with Crypto. I don't know who else got them. I'd love to find out how they got their data. But it's good stuff. That's what we need to do. We need to energize the folks that have a stake in this and get them out to the ballot box. You saw, going back to the national election, and across the country, you saw a demographic of people that were energized this time around, and it's that 18 to 30, the bro culture, if you want to call it. That's, some people think that has a negative connotation. The Joe Rogan of universe. Those folks those guys finally came out and voted, and they're the ones that are holding crypto. They're the ones that believe in this stuff. So we got to keep the momentum. I know that's going to be my main focus, is to energize other people, policymakers, and also believe it. Unfortunately, the other side of this, and Dom, this, it takes money to win elections, and we have to make sure that we're supporting candidates with the resources that they need so that they could stand up and fight for this stuff and still win elections. So we need to get the people who really think that this stuff is important. We got to make sure that they donate to these PACs so that we could really be influential and get in front of them and make sure that that people understand it, because it takes time and resources in order to educate these policymakers, and that stuff, it's not free. It costs money to really get that done. You have to hire people to get in there and get in front of them and educate them on this stuff, because they're not just gonna. It's too complicated for them to learn it on their own.
Sure, and actually, great point. And I wanted to ask you, how can someone like, people like us who work in the industry, or people who, whether it's not their day job, but really support the industry and want to drive it forward, what is a way that we can get involved and support what people like you, really both of you, Mike and Dominic, whether it's from the lobbyist side or from the actual state legislator, or even state or even federal level, how can we support?
So I think it starts with it in Pennsylvania. State rep is a good place to start. We represent about 64,000 people. We're accessible. I'm in my community. Everybody knows me. I'm just, I coach all my kids' stuff. It's a very accessible position. So get to know these folks. They'll listen to you. They'll take a meeting. You know what I mean? Like you find out who your state rep is and ask to, number one, meet in their office. If they're not willing to meet, they'll probably at least do a phone call. Everybody that asks to meet me, or have a phone call for me, I try to make that happen. I try to be responsive and accountable to my constituents, and they need to hear about it. They need to hear that people like you guys are interested and do vote along those lines. Hey, some people their number one issue is abortion. Some people it's immigration. Some people it's the economy. I mean, this could be your issue, and go and educate your legislator and tell them that this stuff matters to you, and that there are other, and that you're following people like me or others in the state legislature that are working on this stuff, and say, hey, I'd love to see you co-sponsor Rep. Cabell's bill. If you say that to somebody, a lot of times they're going to do it. If they don't have they're not against it. I always take that into consideration. I don't always do it, but I always take it into consideration and say, hey, this person's watching. He's paying attention. I work for him or her, and I take that stuff seriously. So that's number one. Get to know these people, and it seems so cliche, but it's so real. I'm telling you, man, it matters. You hear from your constituents, that stuff matters, because that's every 2 years. That's who elects you, who keeps you, or make sure you're not there. And then number two, it's donate to and donate either your time or your hard-earned money to groups like PA Blockchain or Satoshi, or there's plenty others. Do your homework, see who's doing the work. Obviously Dom's doing the work. He calls me 5 times a week. So he's working hard on for PA blockchain, making sure that their policy initiatives are getting done. And that stuff, it costs money and it takes resources. So if you're able to, and especially with Bitcoin at $75,000, 76 floating around there, hey,
we hit 77 today. Yeah,
77.
Yeah,
donate $100 to PA Blockchain Coalition. It goes a long way.
Or one Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Or one Bitcoin.
No, we're never selling or giving away our crypto. We'll give them our fiat currency.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's really great. No, this has been very insightful for us, and just to understand your positions and how things get done, and just what you're working on and how all that works is tremendous. So I think where we wanted to move towards is really the attitude of crypto in the government and how it exists today. And obviously we saw CZ went to jail. We're seeing the existing SEC has forced upon crypto companies the total of $420 million plus dollars on legal defense for litigation being brought on to them. So there's a lot that I think we need to rebuild when it comes to crypto and the government, specifically, I guess, the federal government. And I guess, where do we start? And I guess, how do we fix that attitude of being a friend of the government as opposed to something that's hostile?
Well, I think I heard it, to your point, Alec. I think I heard it summed up, and I really wish I could remember who said it. But, crypto regulation was like being pulled over for speeding, but not knowing the speed limit until you were pulled over, right? And all these enforcement actions, SEC. I mean, look, the reality on the federal level is those folks, a new administration, whether it was, Harris or Trump, those folks are, definitely under Trump, are not going to be there, right? Like the Gary Genslers of the world, they're not going. They're going to be gone. Yeah, they're going to be gone in January, and or sooner. And and with that, you will see these, you will see these new initiatives, and you're going to see folks. We lost some champions, right? Like like Patrick McHenry and folks like that in Congress, Pat Toomey. We've lost folks like that, but like Emmers stepping up, obviously Lummis, right? Gillibrand, they're the I hate this term, but they're the OGs, right? But you're going to see more of that, and there's going to be more of an appetite for that. I think the Biden administration got pressure and just said, we're going to issue an executive order and stick our head in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
And great. And like the Lummis Gillibrand bill, everyone talks about it, but like the original one, 7 committees of jurisdiction. Good luck. That's a decade. So, I think you're going to start to see, like to Mike's point, the cracks in the dam. You're going to start to see meaningful legislation. You're going to start to see, I think I'm sure you both already read, and Mike, you as well. It's like, the Bitcoin as a reserve, right? The white paper came out last week, right after the Satoshi anniversary, right at the white paper anniversary, right? So like you're starting to see it, and these ideas have been around for a while now. And listen, and in this space, a while is a year. But you're starting to see adoption, and it all comes to Mike's point, this idea that people have reached out, people have mobilized, and I know in DC it was more the money and the lobbyists. But, to Mike's point, if you start going to your local elected officials, from your state reps to your state senators on up, that's how you create change. And look, the biggest struggle that we have in PA blockchain, even now, is education. People don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that attitude, like Mike said, right? It's a solution looking for a problem, but it's not. Or, it's a new, listen, I don't trade in pelts or gold anymore, right? Like, so, and checks, and like, it's the evolution, right? No one uses a check anymore. I mean, when was the last time you had change in your pocket, let alone cash?
Mm-hmm.
Even my kids, it's like my 14-year-old uses Cash App. So this is just the evolution. It's just a natural thing.
Yeah.
So and to add to that a little real quick, I think what the market, and I know for sure institutional investors and nation states are looking for is clarity. Like, we need to give, sometimes we might not like some of the answers we're getting here policy wise, but I think ultimately we just need policy. We definitely need a fight on our side. Mm-hmm. Yeah, guide rails for sure. So like we need to fight and make sure. That's why you have you have the advocates, the industry advocates, and the lobbyists and everybody to make sure that we're advocating that the policy is makes sense and is beneficial to the industry. But I mean, really, we need the guide rails so that you have these institutional investors and these foreign wealth, sovereign wealth funds. I mean, you don't think that the sovereign wealth funds, that the Saudis, you don't think they want to allocate 100 basis points or less? And you know what that would do? Like if they put like 0.5% of a sovereign wealth fund into Bitcoin, it'd be $150,000 tomorrow. Just one sovereign wealth fund, the amount of assets that they control. But they will not do it until it is there's guide rules, because everybody that's running their investments are folks from the United States who are used to dealing, trading the S&P and trading the NASDAQ, and and it's all risk. It's all about risk. So I think we need the guide rails, and that's what we're going to see. And hopefully the obstructionists like the Gary Genslers and what's our favorite senator, Warren. So that they see the writing on the wall, that they get out of the way, because the revolution is coming. And be constructive. Like, have your opinion, but be constructive about it. You know what I mean? And let's get something done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the game theory is unfolding, and Bitcoin will ultimately be the winner. So just to wrap it up, guys, really appreciate you taking time out of your busy days. Wanted to give the chance to, Dominic, how could people reach out to you if they wanted to?
Yeah, definitely. PAblockchain.org. You can reach us through there, and just inquiry, go to the website, anything you need, and we usually try to answer within a day.
Perfect.
If not sooner.
Perfect. And Mike?
Yeah, so email is mcabell, C-A-B as in boy, E-L-L, mcabell at pahousegop.com, repcabell.com, all the socials, Rep Cabell. Reach out. We're looking for people to help us, push this policy narrative, and our, just in the general, we just need people to help, and I know Dom, the industry needs to continue to push, because the momentum is there, and if we continue to push, I think we're gonna see some really cool stuff, especially with what happened, a couple days ago in the election. Now is the time really to get involved and really keep the momentum going.
Perfect. Dominic, thank you for all your hard work and getting this passed. Mike Cabell, future, absolute superstar, up and coming. Watch out for him for, future senator, potentially governor of Pennsylvania, maybe president one day. Super exciting. Really appreciate you guys. As always, this is User Extractable Value, brought to you by the team at Advantage Blockchain. Thank you, Monty, for co-hosting with me. I'm Alec Beckman, and you can find us on AdvantageBlockchain.com. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. We are on, we're out there. We're on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out to us as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.